Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Riti Kumari and I am back with another lecture of the DBMS series. So in the last lecture we got to know more about super keys in DBMS. In this particular lecture we are starting with a very important topic which is like mostly asked in the semester exams and sometimes asked in interviews as well. So that is ER model, which stands for Entity Relationship Model in DBMS. So without any further delay, let's get started. So now the first question comes into mind is what is ER model and why we are learning ER model. So let me just explain you from a very small or basic example. Consider that you are a developer. Now you have to make an API. Okay, so you have to make all the API, all the calls which are present in that particular API, all the database calls and everything. So basically there could be an API in which there are some clients which are being called, some database queries which are being done, some database calls which are done. So basically an API have many calls. Okay, now your team leads come to you and explains you okay, this API is doing this and finally giving the result. So you are having a request body and you are getting a response body. Now what happens is ki team lead comes and tell you about all these. At that particular moment of time you remembered ki okay, this particular thing is being called, then there are some clients being called, then there are some database queries which are being happen or database calls which are being happen, and then we are getting the final response. Now consider after 3 days you forgot about one client or you forgot about one DB call, or consider that there are some changes which is happening and you are not still pretty sure that what all things you were doing at the very first and now you need to do some changes as well. So what thing you can do at that particular time? So at that particular time what you can do is ki when your team lead is explaining you, just jot it down in pointers and make a low level design of that particular API. So what you will do is ki you will make a design of that particular API ki okay, the API is getting some request, it is validating some request, and then it is calling some clients, from there it is fetching some data, then it is calling the database, and after all these we are building the final response. So basically LLD diagram at that particular point would save a lot of time of yours because you would be pretty sure about ki what all things are happening. And also you can ask your team lead ki please review my LLD diagram and is my understanding about the API correct, or is there any changes needed, or whenever your team lead suggests some changes, you can just go ahead and make the changes in the LLD diagram. So you can see in a diagram or design is somehow like making things so much easy and somehow also saving our time, right? So in the same way, like a very basic example of Maggie. So consider that you are making Maggie for the first time. Now you need some instructions that how to make a Maggie. So whenever you see that Maggie packet, you see in the background there is like in the back there is some pictures which is given and there are some instructions which is provided. Okay, then tear the plastic and then boil the water and then put the masala and then the noodles and stir it for 2 minutes. So there are some instructions which is being provided, there are some images which is being provided. You just follow that and you are like good to go to make a Maggie. Okay, so basically what happens like whenever you are following any design or any diagrams, it makes task very much easy for you to implement ultimately what you want to do at the very first point. So in the entity relationship model, what happens is ki ER model basically help us in designing a flow chart or the diagrams or everything which is needed for our like entities relationship and what all things are being happened. Now consider, let's take an example of Instagram. So in Instagram there are many features present there, adding a story, uploading a post and much more things. So consider that today I told you that implement the feature of uploading the post in Instagram. So there are many steps which are being followed. First you select the picture, click on the post plus icon, then you select the picture, and then you go ahead and see if you want to apply some filters and much more things. So there are many steps which are being involved for uploading a photo in Instagram. So all these steps, if documented in a very great way or in a very good way, it is diagrammed and designed, it would be very easy for you to understand the overall API of uploading the post, and also it would be very helpful for you to implement that particular API. So in the same way, ER models makes our task easy. So now what is ER model? ER model basically stands for Entity Relationship Model. Now as the definition suggests, entity relationship. What is entity? Any object or anything which is having some physical existence is called as entity. For example, consider person. Person is an entity. Example, student. Student is an entity. So basically anything or any object which has a physical existence is called as entity. Now what is attributes? So basically the characteristics of that particular entity is called as attributes. So you might have heard this term schema in the last set of videos. So what is schema? Consider that I need to give student schema. So what I'll mention is I'll mention the entity name and then I'll provide all the attributes such as student ID, student name, student roll number. So in the same way, it is this is a schema of student. This is a student schema. So in this particular student schema, student is the entity, student ID, student name, student roll number is the attributes. And now coming to the third thing, that is relationship. Now I have given many examples where I have taken two tables. First one is student table and second one is a course table, which was having a primary key foreign key relationship between them. So in that particular videos I also told that student is having some relationship with the course. So basically student and course have a relationship कि student is taking this particular course for that particular class or that particular standard and that particular roll number. So basically a student is taking this particular course. So basically there was a relationship between student and course table, that student is taking or opting or studying that particular course. So in relationship what happens is we define it in a diagrammatic way. So what will happen is there is a student database. Now there is a course database. And now what is the relationship between student and courses? Student studies course. So basically we give student in rectangular format and study like the relationship in the diamond format. So what happens is student is now studying a course. So basically entity relationship model is we define the relationships between the entity that is studies, and entities are present here, and attributes are basically the characteristics of entities. So attribute can be student ID, which we give in ellipse, then student name and much more things. So basically this is the basic funda of ER model. So let me just clear the screen and let's go one by one. Okay. So introduction to AR model. Entity, things or objects is called as entity. Example, person. Now attributes, properties of entities or characteristics of entities called as attributes, such as names, age, student ID and much more things. Relationship is association among the entities, that is works for or studies or like much more things. Okay? Now the entity relationship model stands as a prevalent conceptual modeling approach within the realm of the database design. Its primary role is to offer a visual representation of a database architecture by illustrating the entities, their respective attributes and the interconnections between them. So what is happening is it is basically a virtual representation of a database. So the database is very huge. Now in that particular database there are some tables which is having some relationships in between them. So what will happen, we'll just design that particular database. So consider that there is a student database. In that particular database there are many tables, student table, course table, then fee details and much more things. Now we will define it what are the relationship between these particular entities. In the process of database design, the ER model holds significant importance, aiding in the development of an efficient and systematically structured database schema. So as I told, if I am having an LLD diagram, I can design, I can implement the API very quickly. If someone who is very new to that particular API and don't know anything about that API, if I give him the LLD diagram, him or her, they can implement the API very easily. So basically LLD diagram or visual represent or designing is something if we hand over to anyone, it will make the process very easy. The designing of the database, when it's done, we can go ahead and implement the database, we can go ahead and know about the database, what all tables are there and much more things. So basically it is somehow making our task very easy. Now in the ER model, as I told that ER model starts for entity relationship model. Now there is entity, there is attribute and there is relationship. Now there are types of entities as well, strong entity and weak entity. We will be knowing in the coming videos. Now in the attributes also, there are many attributes like simple, composite, single valued, multi-valued, stored, derived, composite. So basically about all these attributes we would be again knowing in depth in the next set of videos. I'm just letting you know that there are like entities also divided in some subtypes, attributes is also divided into subtypes, and relationship is also divided into some subtypes. Relationship, or also called as cardinality, is also there: one to one, many to one to many to one, and many to many. Now these are the symbols which is basically used in the ER model. So as I told, consider that there are two entities. So firstly I'll give the schema. So I'm giving the schema for student and course. Now student schema has student ID, student name, and course schema has course ID, course name. So what is this? This is basically entity. So what I'll do is key, according to the symbol, entity is represented by rectangle, so I'll give the name student. Now again course is also one entity, so I'll give it in rectangle shape, course. And now attributes are represented in ellipse. So attributes are nothing but the characteristic, so we'll give the attributes student ID, student name, and then the attributes for this: course ID, course name. And now at the very last we give the relationship among them. So from the diamond it is given, and the relationship is study. So basically in this way we design the ER model. This is a very basic ER model design. We would be knowing in much more depth about some complex database designs as well, but this is just a small example that how we are designing everything from entity to attributes to relationship. So basically this is the student schema, this is the course schema, and whenever we have this particular schema we can go ahead and design our entity relationship model or design the visual representation of that particular model. So there are much more things like line is like attribute to entity relationship. Now double ellipse is multi-valued attributes, and double rectangle is weak entity. As I told here that there are many subtypes of attributes and entities, so we would be looking about that in the next set of videos. Now this is a normal example of ER model as I explained earlier as well. So there is an entity called as professor, there is an entity with the name student. Now there is a relationship between the professor and the student, that is teaches. So basically relationship is teaches. Now student may have some characteristics or may have some attributes, so that attributes is represented using ellipse, and the attributes are ID, name, and subject. So these are the attributes, this is the entity, this is the entity, and this is the relationship. So basically in the last slide I also explained about this particular example of student and course. In a similar way there is example of student and professor. So this was all about ER model in this particular video. Let me just revise from the very basics. So ER model stands for entity relationship model. Entity relationship model helps us to give a visual representation of our database, so that designing of database, when it becomes easy, the implementation of database also becomes easy. So ER model is entity relationship model. Entity is basically any object or anything which has a physical existence. Relationship is a relationship between the entities, and attributes is basically the characteristics of the entities, like student ID, student name for a student table, and course ID, course name for a course table. Now again entity and relationship have some subtypes, also attributes also have some subtypes. So about all those types and about all the types of entity and relationship we would be having a look on next video. Basically it is providing a visual diagram to us which would help us to implement the database very easily and very effectively. So this was all about this video. I hope you like this video. So if you're someone who is new to my channel, please go ahead and check out the tech content first, and then if you like it, go ahead and subscribe. Also, if you're someone who is liking this video, please hit the like button. If you're someone who is like just now starting with DBMS and your friends are also looking for a series, then you can surely share it among your friends and watch it if you like it. And till then, take care, keep learning, keep growing, keep smiling, and bye all.